Welcome to Brightly, You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Hey, Amy.
Hey, Tracy.
So I am electric today.
Wow.
I'm just going to start off with that. Last night, I was just sharing with you off air, but last night I wanted to text you a whole bunch of stuff. And instead I texted myself so that I wouldn't forget.
Yeah.
But so one of our OG listeners and one of my good friends, Darcy, she's a massage therapist. And then she also does energetic healings and kind of readings at the end of that. So I've been feeling kind of heavy lately. And then who doesn't need a full body massage, right? And so I had reached out to her, and usually I say, hey, any chance you have availability in the next week or two, or in the coming weekend, like leave it really open-ended and try and, be flexible for her schedule to make it work. This week I had one night only. And so I was just like, I almost didn't reach out, but I think it was on Monday I reached out and I was just like, hey, any chance you can get me in Thursday? And she's like, no, I'm sorry. If it changes, I'll let you know. Mm-hmm. Next day, her Tuesday evening client dropped. And she's like, I don't usually do this, but my Thursday client is incredibly flexible and has a really open schedule. So I'm just going to ask. So the Thursday client was more than happy to switch to Tuesday. And then I got the Thursday slot. So like it was already feeling like in alignment, right? Like I was all jazzed to begin with, but now I'm like, the universe is working for me. This is wonderful. And I mean, she's a friend. So we just sit and talk the whole time. And it's kind of like a podcast episode. I want to have her on someday. Like she's really into some of the spiritual stuff and some of the other things we talk about.
Yeah.
But she said the whole time during the energy healing, it was like my third eye was like popped out, like way out here. And she just kept pushing it back in and being like, like, this is too much. She's got to drive home. Wow. And so I didn't really feel that in the moment. Like I was seeing, like I kind of meditate during it. And sometimes I do see stuff. I'm not going to say I'm like prophetic visions or anything, but I was seeing some kind of cool things, but it was also like really crazy and out there stuff. And so I was like, yeah, I get why you think that's active, but I'm kind of like, hey, pop it back out. Complete other end of the spectrum from where I was. But then I found myself when I got home, I had a song in my head and I found like, not only did I have a song in my head, but I was kind of dancing along to it as I walked to my house. Then I was singing it out loud when I got in the house. Then I was like, I don't even know if I know this song. Like what, like I knew I had heard it, but in my head, it was not the song that I Googled the lyrics for. It was something totally different. And so then I played it. But it's the B.O.B. song, Magic in Me. I got the magic in me.
Yes.
That's the most you guys will get from me. But
that
so
was
that
lovely,
just,
actually.
Thank you. But so I was just feeling all magical, like I said, feeling electric. But on the way home, I also listened to our signs episode, which is also electric. If you haven't listened, please go back. But one of the quotes, you had said something like, ask yourself, right? Like instead of asking the universe for your sign, ask yourself. And it just dawned on me like, duh, I'm the universe. Duh.
Oh, yeah.
Amy is the universe.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love it so much.
Right. So not only do I have the magic in me, I got the universe in me.
That's right. And the funny thing is, this ties in so well because super struggling with this topic, which we won't keep secret from you for very much longer, but I was struggling. And I'll tell you, it's just trusting your own divinity, right? Mm-hmm. So basically the universe in you, God in you, source, however you walk through the world. I was really struggling and I don't know why, because it's something that I believe in, but I was just struggling.
You don't know why. This is a very grand topic,
Okay,
Amy.
thank
I was
you.
real happy when
Thank
we were
you.
talking about it. I was like, so you're going to do this one? And you're like, yep. And I was like, cool, because I'm not.
Yeah, it took me. Oh, anyways, so I listened to, because sometimes we don't get a chance to listen to our episodes. We try to, because like that's how you learn and grow.
And sometimes it's real
So,
awkward and hard too. And that's why we
yeah,
don't.
yeah. But the signs episode was not to toot our, well, okay, I'm going to toot our own horn. It was so good and funny. And it was just like nugget, nugget, nugget. Like, I feel like we could have pulled out 7 to 10 quotes from that episode, where when I was listening to them, I was like, what? Oh, and
we learn from ourselves after the conversation.
Well, I think sometimes things are downloaded through us and we don't even know what the heck's coming out of our mouth. But so, of course, instead of looking for signs, but you're being the sign, trusting your intuition, your inner knowing, of course, leads into trusting your own divinity. Duh. Like, hello. So I know that what comes up for me, especially I think because I was raised Catholic, which I'm sure many were, is that, of course, we were raised only God is perfect. So we are inherently imperfect. And not only that, if you're raised Catholic, original sin, like all of that stuff, just like all kinds of stuff laid on you, right? So of course, it's like, how can I be divine or trust in my divinity if I'm imperfect? And I think that's the biggest hurdle for us to just like not get over, because never would I say, you're not imperfect, you're perfect. We're not.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, okay. Okay. But I would say we could be both. And it's fine to have that duality. I read this quote. I've heard it before, but you know how when you hear things and then suddenly when you actually need to like really understand it, you read it again or you hear it again, you're like, oh, must remember that. So it was Rabbi Reb Zuzia said, in the coming world, they will not ask me, why were you not Moses? They'll ask me, why were you not Zuzia? So in other words, I think that not only do we get caught up in our imperfections, we get caught up in our perceived notion of other people's perfections that we think we should be. And so within our imperfections, we don't even try to be ourself or the best self that we could be.
Well, that's our episode. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Have a bright and beautiful day. We're just going to drop that on you. Have a good one.
So I guess, I don't know what comes up for you. Like, do you agree with, like, obviously just at the start of the podcast, you were like, oh, duh, the universe is in me. I am the universe.
Right.
So
I'll expand on that, because when you were saying the quote, the first time you said the quote, I didn't get it. I missed his last name. I was like, who's Zuzia?
Right.
So when you said it the second time, I was like, oh, this is deep. This is great. But what it made me think of is there's a story, and I'll post it on Instagram. I wasn't prepared. I don't have my fact checking in front of me, but there's a story that essentially we are not 8 billion souls on this planet. We're one soul experiencing life 8 billion times.
Yeah.
And so that's what I pictured when you were, talking about how we compare ourselves to other people, and especially that we tend to see other people's perfections, which we've talked about in the past. I don't know if it was the Glimmers episode, no, the Golden Shadows episode, where typically when a person like that is in your life and you're seeing all the stuff you want to be or think you're not, or you're jealous of what or envious of what they have, typically that's because you can be that too. and
Yeah.
you really want to be that, and you're recognizing your golden shadow, right? And so it's interesting to me that when you think of your own imperfections, you think of other people and how they're may or may not be better than you in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hypercritical all the time as a Virgo, as just like an analytical person. But I've learned, like ever since I turned 30, it was kind of a stereotypical moment. Like I'm beating my own personal record moving forward. It's not doing the best ever. I'm showing up and doing the best Tracy can today, right?
And
And that's
that's
going to look different
exactly
all the
what
time.
I feel like that embodies that quote, right?
And
You're being the best Tracy.
yeah, and I think there's so it I heard recently, our personality is how we survive in the world. I've
Mm.
brought up before that your personality isn't permanent, and you can change
Mm-hmm.
things, and it's more about character and what's inside yourself. But I was also thinking about personality, because he's like, why were you not Moses? They'll ask you, why were you not yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And it's, are you trying to show up in the world as something that you're not because you think you should be?
Or because you think you are so imperfect, you need to show up as something else, and that you can't see the perfections, you know, in the cracks of your imperfection. I feel like we can be both perfect and imperfect at the same time. Um, I
I think
also
to be
really,
divine is to be both, or as my boss says, both
oh,
and.
I like that.
Both and. When you said crack, what was your line about cracks just now?
Well, let's see if I can rewind that. That we we don't look for the perfection in the cracks of our imperfection.
So I believe there's an old traditional Japanese art where they take broken
Yes,
ceramic and pottery and they repair it with
with
like gold
gold.
line.
Yeah, and then they make it even more beautiful.
Yeah, and so the imperfections enhance its beauty and make it more unique and
Yeah.
special.
I
Uh,
think, have you heard of this also? So this quote, your mess is your message.
ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't come up with that, and I don't know who did, but it's basically all the things that I think you would think of yourself, maybe your imperfections or the hard things you've gone through, and maybe how you didn't work through them well, is actually how you can help other people move through those same things. Kind of getting off topic here, but it
No,
is interesting.
you asked why would I be created with imperfections or something like to that effect.
Yeah.
And that makes me think of our strengths episode and
Oh
how
yeah.
typically if you take like the Gallup strength survey, there's like what 30 of them, and they share with you your top
34.
34. Thank you. They share with you your top 5, and they call them like balconies and basements. And they tell you, instead of trying to enhance your bottom 5, really play to your strengths. And so if you have imperfections, and there are 8 billion of us, whether we're one soul or 8 billion, but by being forced or encouraged to play to your strengths, then we all get to bring a little bit more to the world and help each other more. Um,
Yes.
there were 8 billion perfect people on the planet. That just sounds boring.
It does sound boring, actually. And yeah, that's once again, I believe in the duality. I believe you can be divine and imperfect, and that typically people who show their imperfections are usually way more interesting.
Yeah, they got character, man.
Right?
And I mean, it depends on like, what are you calling or considering an imperfection?
Well, right. Are you actually asking me that, or are you asking the listener that? Because I think
Sure.
that's a really good question. I want to ask that. I want to add that to our little basket of questions. So what are you calling an imperfection? Because one person might be calling, well, I don't like my voice. I see that as an imperfection. Someone else might say, I don't like the way I automatically treat people. Like that. And that might be an imperfection you actually want to work on. then,
Yeah,
I
I
think,
immediately thought of societal norms, right? So kind of like how
yeah.
gender is a construct, beauty
Hmm.
is a construct, like
Hmm.
time is a social construct, right? So there's like so many imperfections we can just immediately begin weeding out. And so I feel like it boils down to character, just to bring up another episode that we did,
Yeah.
where I think the imperfections that really matter are just what you said, like how am I showing up in the world?
Hmm.
And I've never thought of that as an imperfection before, but that's kind of a beautiful way to look at like how you maybe want to improve something about yourself.
Yeah. And in no way, well, first of all, I just want to say right away that in no way does this, like, is this the episode? Are we like saying, like, you're a god, you're a god, you're a god? Maybe, but not to the point where you get to, like, you're not in charge of other people's destiny. That's more like what we mean, right? And with the imperfections, what I love, what you just said, is um it also doesn't mean that we or anyone around you should expect you to just, like, boom, I'm going to change the way I'm acting. But it's once again that self knowledge, that taking the time to actually say, who am I? Like, how do I show up in the world? Right.
But
Um,
so if you approach that, the character aspect of it, how am I showing
mhm,
up in the world? How am I acting? How am I behaving? And you reframe it more as recognizing my own divinity. That's a
mhm.
better reminder than I don't want to be a bitch to my husband when he comes home, right? Like,
Not
like
only is that a good reminder, but I think recognizing your own divinity, but also turning that outward and recognizing your divinity, right? I recognize your divinity. So
yes,
why do I want to, like, treat you like right, like a horrible person? Or why do I
Mhm.
want to be a horrible person to you? And so also, like, we have free will, supposedly, I've been told. And what if you just made the choice? You choose divinity, you choose to see divinity in yourself and other people. So when I think about that, then I have to think, okay, what does that mean? Like, what would that look like? And I think for me, it's like, it's choosing how I view the world, right? I can judge people, um or I can choose to try to remove that judgment, which that's hard to do. But when you start doing that, and I think if you did make the conscious choice of trusting your divinity and others' divinity as well, it would be easier. It would be like, okay, I'm not going to judge what that person did or who I think they are. Um, Neutrality is really hard, but that is part of it. And then I think also, like what you said about we're one soul living 8 billion, however you worded that,
lives, yeah,
8
experiences.
billion lives. So then if you could choose to see the connection that you are, like, what if I chose to say, I am a part of Tracy, like Tracy is a part of me? I think we treat each other differently.
I think a lot of the world's problems would end, right?
Right.
I mean, there's so many disparities out there, and so many people have that scarcity mindset, and they don't want to give money. They don't want to pay extra fees or taxes or change what's been their normal in
Mm-hmm.
society for someone else because they didn't get it, or why does that person deserve it? And when you're going
Right.
from a path of, you know, I am you, you are me. We're all connected. We're all divine. We're all just here experiencing Earth in a very small fraction. We're on a floating rock. I mean, you're just going to treat people better. But we get so caught up in that day to day and that struggle and that hustle and having to take care of yourself and having to fight that it becomes the rare individual who can do something like that or something
Yeah.
on weekends, right? Like, oh, I volunteer once a month, um, and then something like that. But I also feel like, you mentioned, approaching people with more grace, right? Which we've talked about before, and
Mhm.
not judging. And um, how have you said it before? Something, when someone's in line, like you're showing them grace by not saying something to them, by not
Yeah.
sighing, by not getting frustrated, right? You don't have to be extra nice to someone to recognize the divinity in them. You don't have to reward poor
Yeah.
behavior, but you can just kind of show up in the world in a more understanding capacity. But I think you
Mhm.
can also, when you're recognizing and trusting your own divinity, it's important to turn that on yourself, right? So if
Yes.
you're
Yes.
feeling shame,
Mhm.
if you're feeling guilt, and outside of like, I actually did a really bad thing, in which case those emotions exist for a reason, process and work through that. But we get in these shame spirals, right? Like Brene Brown
Yeah.
talks about it all the time. And it's hard to be vulnerable, and it's hard to see yourself as other people see you.
Yeah. I think too, right now, we're so divided on so many different platforms that it's very hard to see a connection with another human being who you basically disagree with, right? But if you could respond, and like you said, not only to others, but to yourself with love, having love be first and like from a higher self. Um, I always think of this, and I know we've talked about it before. Jen Sincero, she writes the "You Are a Badass" books.
Oh, yeah.
He always says, just just think of, and I think it's yourself or another person when somebody really pisses you off. You're like, just imagine them as a bunny. They're just a little bunny doing the best they can. And the minute you do that, it just takes all that air out of it, right?
You
It
know what
takes
I have started doing?
what?
Like independent of any of these thoughts or conversations we've had, that divisiveness is all over
Yeah.
social media, it's all over
Hmm.
politics, the news, and all that. And some of it with, the happenings of the past 2 years, it's quite aggravating, right? Like, because
Hmm.
both sides feel so big in their conviction, and if someone's wrong, those are huge consequences, right? So I was
Hmm.
finding, first I was getting really agitated and angry and like not the best communicator, and not having an outlet because I'm alone in my house, right? I'm not allowed to leave. But then I just started avoiding, not watching the news, not being a good citizen, not paying
Hmm.
attention, taking advantage of my privilege. And now it just started kind of happening. The more I see people on like TikTok and Instagram and the news and stuff, I just kind of wonder, like, what were you like as a kid? Like, even politicians I don't
Yeah.
like. And I just try and picture what they were like as a kid and what happened for them to get so far from,
Yes.
because children are born not recognizing race, these societal judgments, these other, like, they learn the beauty standards and all that stuff,
Hmm.
and so like kids 3 4, I mean, it's hard these days because so much is inundated by social media and television and movies, that I feel like it's a little bit more ingrained in them a little bit younger. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I remember in elementary school, there was a little boy my age who had Tourette syndrome, and he made sure that the school made sure that there was a core group of 10 of us, that whatever class he had until 8th grade, us 10 were in there. And not only
That gave
that,
me chills.
right? But so what happened was, we had known him since he was so little, and we had learned so much about it. And we didn't know this was going on, right? Like, I think they just kind of picked the empathetic, social, friendly kids in there.
Okay.
We fought for him. We protected him. We looked out for him. We, even without even training or encouragement from teachers, just started proactively teaching people or warning people about him, and like demonstrating through our actions, like, oh, this is how we react when this happens or when that, because with Tourette's, it's very verbal tics, so it kind
Yes.
of awkward. There's
Hmm.
some social awkwardness there. There's physical tics and behaviors. And I since learned, when I went to school to become a counselor, that they do that on purpose. That all of this was done on purpose because little kids are so accepting and understanding, and they like see the person as the person.
Oh,
um, that when there are other students, whether it's, they're in a wheelchair, they're deaf, blind, some sort of disability, some sort of diagnosis or something like that, those kids, through high school, like, in high school you get to pick your own classes and stuff, so it's a little bit different, but still, like, senior year came back, and like I went toe to toe for that kid, and I hadn't talked to him in 4 years, and
yeah.
I was like, there's no way anybody's bothering
Yeah.
him.
Absolutely.
um And so it's so interesting to me, like at what point do you learn that hate? At what point do you hate yourself? Like all
Right.
these different
Well, I
areas.
want to go back to what you said about imagining them as a little kid and what happened to you when I took this day long. It was just like this really cool workshop University of Minnesota put on about basically kids developing and what happens with their brain and what can happen through different things that happen in their life. And one of the key takeaways for me was, instead, when you see someone doing something that you don't agree with, instead of the initial thing in your head, what's wrong with you, to say instead, not to them, but in your head, what happened to you?
What happened?
Because
Yep.
what happened? Because it's not that anything's wrong, but something happened and now they're acting this other way. I think also to turn that on yourself, right? You can also absolutely turn that on yourself. Um, and and a great thing to ask is, where can I see divinity in others? And then be able to see it in myself. And how would I treat others if I trusted in their divinity? I
And it's
think,
that trust piece, because when
yeah.
we disagree with someone on a moral issue, a societal issue, right? These are like core beliefs in us. They
Mhm,
go back to our values and ultimately how we want to be treated, right? So if somebody is going
mhm.
against it, even if it doesn't seem directly, it is kind of a personal attack on you, right?
It's a
And
threat.
it's a
It's a
threat.
threat.
And
And you
how are you
feel
going to trust
threatened.
someone that
Yes.
immediately you do not align with on
Yeah.
very important things? But when you approach it not with, I'm aligning with their beliefs and their actions and behaviors, but I'm aligning with the divinity, the possibility within them. We're all connected. We all had some experience in life that brought us to this point. I do want to
Mhm.
say, so I think those are great questions. Like, where can I see divinity in others and be able to see it in myself? I think in practice, it's always going to be easier to see it in others, but it's not going to stick or last, or it's going to take a lot of effort and, conscious, intentional doing if you don't do it to yourself first.
Yeah, I think definitely if you can see it in yourself, you can see it in others. And you're right. That's where it really has to hook in,
And
right?
that's
Is
where the hard work is, right? It's that simple, but it's not that
yeah,
easy.
right. So how do you do that?
Exactly.
Like
How do you do
how
it?
I right? I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, and everyone's going to go, "Oh," is meditate, meditate, dance to the
Surprise.
music. Oh, this is our singing episode. If only we could sing. But of course, meditation and basically getting quiet with yourself, but also, like, think about what brings you joy. And while you're in the moment, if you can actually be like, oh, I feel that, that is also great.
Sure. I want to pause you for a second.
Yeah.
So you said for meditating, sitting with yourself. Anybody who doesn't meditate or only does, really specific guided meditations, if you can't sit with yourself, you are not going to be able to trust yourself and find the divinity in yourself. You have to learn
Tracy.
to sit in silence. You can't learn how to love yourself if you don't spend time with yourself, which I know is an ironic or dumb thing to say when we're the ones we spend the most time with. But I also feel like we
We
lie to ourselves
don't.
the most. We ignore
Yeah.
ourselves the most. We don't show up for ourselves. It's so much easier to show up for others and then be upset nobody's showing up for you. You have to show up for you first. You have to like you first, and then
Mhm.
spend time with yourself to get to this point where you do see yourself as divine.
And I know when people are just starting out with meditation that it is easier to do a guided meditation,
Oh yeah,
because that's absolutely how I
and they
started. And
all have their
sometimes,
time and place.
yep. And sometimes I still will do that, or at least a tiny bit of guided and then quiet and then coming back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also just sit with myself, quiet, not with nothing in my ears, just
Mm-hmm.
sit.
And it's
And
it's not about not having thoughts. That's actually really hard. And if you think about that, that's all you're going to recognize. It's about not judging your thoughts. It's about not reacting to them or acting on them, right? It's learning to sit with that and seeing.
yeah. And once again, that showing up with neutrality, right, for your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts and what's going through. Yeah, I'm really glad that you clarified that. And I would say if someone hasn't meditated like that before, 2 minutes, just start with
Oh
something
yeah.
little. It's not like we're not expecting you to go off in a dark room for 2 hours. Like start
Yeah,
small.
we're not asking you to become a monk, right? Like you don't actually have to hike a mountain, shave your head, wear a sheet, and meditate 20 hours a day. Like that is not what recognizing your own divinity is.
I mean, maybe for some people it is, but I
Want,
don't
I
know.
mean, again, like I'm not stopping you, no judgment, bad, but it's not what we're
So,
saying per se.
yeah. And I think too, once you get used to that sort of quiet being with you, then really kind of dig deeper into that. Who are you? Who actually are you? Who are you? And if you don't know, start maybe journaling around that.
Or do what's it called? One of my affirmations where you ask yourself
Oh,
questions before bed and you just
yeah.
let a sleep back of your brain, you figure it out, right? And you just
I
wake up all
love that.
brilliant one day. So ask yourself,
Yeah.
who am I before bed?
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, when we think about being like this spiritual being having a human existence, um being human means actually being in your body. And I think lots of times for human beings, they don't listen to their body. They just don't. That's not what
Having
they
a
do.
body is hard, Amy.
I know
Even
it
on a good
is.
day, it's kind of hard. It's a big deal.
I know it is, but honestly, we have bodies for a reason, and our bodies contain wisdom. And if you can get quiet with yourself, your body sometimes will tell you what it needs or wants. It also can let you know if, hey, I'm about to do this thing. Let me listen. How do I feel with that? I'm about to eat this thing. What's my body saying? I mean, that takes
Well,
practice
because
too, but
if you don't feel comfortable in your meat suit, you're not going to be able to show up with grace for yourself or other people, right? So again, it kind of goes back to that meditating thing, taking care of yourself kind of a thing, that if you're not nourishing yourself, if you're not experiencing rest and joy and play,
right.
you're not going to be able to fully show up in the world,
Yes.
at least not for
So
long.
exactly. And then just little by little, try and move away from judgment of yourself and others. Just try and move away from that. And
Don't
also
judge
like,
people, it's discernment, Amy.
yeah, I love that. Maybe the first step in trusting our divinity is in trusting who we were created to be. So if you can say who you are, and maybe even the next question, who do I want to show up as, or who do I think I could show up as? Like that, why weren't you Zuja, right? That's what it
Well,
is.
and
Who were
so it
you
comes
created
with,
to be?
you said, embracing no judgment. And that also comes with acceptance, right? And
Yeah.
acceptance does not mean approval. That was really hard for me in therapy. That I was
Oh,
forgiving something meant I was accepting it, which meant I approved of it. And that is not the case. Accepting it is, like you said, no judgment, just allowing it to be. This is who I am, and it's okay, imperfections and all.
Tracy, I love that. And I just, will you just say it one more time?
Accepting something is not the same as approving something.
Thank you. I think that is key. And I love that. I, so the question you could ask yourself is, who was I created to be? And who could I be if I believed in and trusted my divinity?
Who could I be?
Who could I
I
be?
love that.
And don't think about who you
Want
showed
to
up
be.
as 10 years ago, right? Again. Yeah. And I think, as always, we ask you to spend time with yourself, some deep time with yourself. Um, Ask yourself these questions, and we can, we will post the questions um, on social media. And if you need help with that, or if you're not on Instagram, um, email us.
Yeah.
So,
So, with that, if this episode did speak to your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on those preferred platforms with the rate, review, and subscribe. So, we are on Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast, or email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
and with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful, a divinely beautiful day.
Divinely beautiful day. You are divinely beautiful. Bye.